Welcome to this video. So the title of this video will be Exploring Sound 2. I made a video called Exploring Sound. If you haven't seen it, you might want to take a look. It's about direct experience of sound and actually direct experience of sensory phenomenon in a non-dual way. So the reason I decided to make a second video is I've had good discussions with people that demonstrate to me that these, or at least that approach, has been helpful, and people are able to feel into that watching the video. But I was asked a few questions about fine-tuning or subtleties of this investigation, this inquiry, this approach. So I thought I would make another video, just maybe accentuating a few points or aspects of this type of a practice. So first of all, what's the absolute most important takeaway from this is not something you need me for, of course, not something you need a teacher for, not something you need any book or text or good pointing from somebody who has realized this. This video is really just a way of helping you recognize and realize that this is a very natural way to experience reality, and that you have access to it. And these types of approaches, these types of inquiries, contemplations, are completely available to you at all times. They're available during meditation, during silent sitting. They're available when you're sitting in traffic or when you feel some impatience standing in a grocery store line. They're available when you're working, when you're driving, mowing your lawn, doing dishes, talking to people. These types of inquiries can be touched in on really anytime. So please never take any message like this to mean that I know something you don't, or I have a way of accessing something you haven't yet accessed. It's not really like that. You actually have direct access to this at all times. It's simply that thoughts make a lot of noise for a while. A certain setup of polarity inside of consciousness makes it feel very much like there's a dualistic experience rather than a non-dual experience, or an primarily immersed experience. Not something you get to, not something you accomplish or wake up to. It's already there. It's primarily immersed, and the only thing that can really make it even seem like that's not the case is the way thoughts move in our minds. And there are ways to point to that and inquire to get behind those polarizing arrangements. Excuse me, my eye itches from allergies. Get behind those polarizing arrangements or mechanisms in thought and in consciousness. But I'm not addressing that in this video. This is more of a direct pointing to non-dual experience of sensory phenomenon, specifically sound. Or did I say sensation? I can't even remember what I started off saying. Doesn't really matter. But it will be exploring sound 2. So the first, I'll make it very simple. I will state a certain affirmation, or you could call it a point of inquiry, but I would say in this sense it's actually more of an affirmation, because by this time I'm sort of speaking to an audience that has had a taste of this non-dual experience, or even an awakening. So I'll make the assumption that the sense of direct experience is available, and that it's realized that this is how it is. This is the way it is. At some level, you recognize that sound hears sound. There is only sound. There's no separation between a hearer and a sound. There's just sound. So if you can sense into that at all, then this contemplation, or let's call it an affirmation, is authentic and sincere, because you know at some level it's true, even if it's not in your direct experience moment to moment. So the affirmation is, when there's hearing, there's only sound. Or in hearing, only sound. Or in hearing, only the heard. And there's a historical reference to this. It's an old sutra, very old piece of writing that dates back a couple thousand years, more than a couple thousand years, and is attributed to Buddha, actually. So there's no need to know any more than that unless you're curious. But the important point is that the power of this is in its simplicity. So when we affirm in hearing only sound, what we're doing is pointing out what natural hearing is. And when I say natural hearing in this moment, I don't mean to adopt some belief that there's something called natural hearing. I'm saying it that way to make a contrast between there's natural hearing, and then there's what the thought world thinks of something I heard, a voice, remembering some conversation today, kind of reflected sounds in the mind, reflected sounds in the thoughts, the corridors of the thought world. And we can get so fully immersed in that thought world that we literally forget what it is to hear, fully hear. This sounds absurd until you get that taste, that non-dual experience of one sound. And then you realize that we've been looking through a veil of thought for many, many years. To the mind, to the thought system, let's say, to consciousness, sound is fleeting. It's an object. It is, and it's distant, meaning it's not here. It's maybe close to here, maybe in the room, maybe even in my mind, my head, in the thought world. But it's not here. It's not intimate, complete intimacy. Okay? That's the mind or thought world's a version of sound. It's a reflection. And often it's a reflection of a reflection, because at some point thoughts start referring only to other thoughts, or largely to other thoughts. And it's like in the movie Fight Club, where he describes insomnia is like a copy of a copy of a copy. Like you're never quite awake, you're never quite asleep. It has that distant, dry, isolating feeling, the way our thought world perceives sense experience. That's the way it perceives sound. In contrast, non-dual experience of sound, which is pointed to by this affirmation, in hearing only sound, is not in time, not locatable. If I could say it feels like something, it feels like every location. It fills up the universe. It fills up all of experience. It pulls attention immediately here, right into itself. Sound fulfills itself. Sound completes itself. And in that completion is the completion of all of life. It permeates. It permeates the other senses. Sound permeates the sensation in the body. Sound permeates the visual field. It has no beginning and no end. It has no general direction, no purpose or meaning. It is its own purpose and meaning. It is so complete, it's so vivid, that it has no use for distancing, has no use for definitions. It's not volitional in the way that sounds, but the point is it's so fully immersed. It's so full. There's no need to contemplate where it is in relation to a view. There's no need to try to attach a meaning or purpose or nothing. It's fullness. More real than real could ever be. deep intimacy. It's the kind of thing when you experience it, when you touch into it, and I say you experience it, that's a way of speaking, you actually collapse into the experience, or you meet the experience to where there's just one. There's no good way of saying it exactly, but anyway, when this experience arises, when this experience happens, this pure sensory experience, you realize intuitively this is what you've always been looking for, always. You might have called it validation, the perfect lover. You might have called it the future, when I have enough money, security, the end of fear, the end of my suffering. Whatever we're seeking, whatever we think we want, all the these are all surrogates for this. And it's known not even intellectually. It's deeply intuitively clear. There's no outside. Nowhere else you could ever possibly want to be. It would be absurd to think so. That's how complete this is, this combustion of identity into one sound. Very radiant. No edge, no boundary, no center. But you don't have to look for it. Touches everything. Pure contact. It's pure contact. Even though it's just sound. Even though I'm speaking as if it's one sense modality, it's every sense modality. It's like, wow. There it is. There it is. There it is. It's here, here, here. That's the full side. The feminine. The integration that never needs to integrate, because it's by nature integrated. It's also disintegrating simultaneously. You could say it's married to the nothingness, the dark side. As Dogen said, when one side is illuminated, I'm pointing very strongly towards the illuminated side. But he said, when one side is illuminated, the other side is dark. Paradoxically, also, you can't see this fully illuminated side unless there's a complete release into the letting go. So if thoughts start to come, oh, that sounds good, but I'm not sure I'm there yet, right? That's the thought. Now where's the sound? In hearing, only sound. And all of a sudden, it's everywhere again. Fills up the room, fills up the world, fills up the universe. The hum, the ring in the ears, the sound of the voice. Nothing else. There is nothing else. If there's an emotion, doubt, even fear, uncertainty, that is that sound. That is the sound. One sound. The sound of one hand. and Zen. The sound of one step, the sound of one cloud, the sound of one hiccup, the sound of one taste of ramen, the sound of sounds, the sound of no sound. So maybe that's helpful. I'd love to hear questions or comments. I can make more along these lines as well if it's helpful to anyone. But my suggestion is just affirm this way and look for that you already know is there. You already intuit it, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. The intuition's already there, so affirm it. In hearing, there's only sound. Which sound? The sound you hear right now. Find its infinite nature. Find its all-inclusive, all-encompassing, vivid, vibrant, unlocatable because it's too close, and it's also everywhere nature. Find that. It might come slowly at first. It might come full on. It doesn't really matter. But that's what this pointing is for. You have the ability to do this, and you won't be disappointed. That I promise. So, good luck.